Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast, joins us on the Adam Gold Show. How are you, sir?
Okay. I declared last night the Game 7 of Game 1s, and
Did
now
you?
I think, and now I'm afraid this is the most must-win Game 2 in NHL Stanley Cup playoffs history.
It's very possible.
The most must-win Game 2 in the history of the postseason format. I think that's what we're staring down right here. It was sobering, just to because you're letting your mind drift. Like you're sitting there, you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna be at the beach with my family. Would I drive back for a cup game? I got reckless yesterday. I got unhinged.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean it might have been all calm here, but it was just like just a war zone inside my skull. So to at least be centered and to at least have the focus on the biggest must-win Game 2 in Stanley Cup playoffs history, that it's a more sharpened focus than the hazy daydreams I was having before Game 1.
I like the hazy daydreams, by the way, and the answer always is, yeah, of course I'll drive back from the beach. Ain't that far.
Right.
It's not like unless you're going to the beach in Mexico. In which case, I would not drive back.
The decision was made. It was more game planning, explaining to my family the 24-hour absence that would happen between leaving at lunchtime one day and making it back for lunch the next day.
Right. So my excuse for not driving back from Charlotte in 2006 was that it was essentially our honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
That was my excuse, and never mind. I don't really want to go back and relive that moment. Chip Patterson here, as he is every Wednesday. But real quick, just about that, since you brought it up to start about yesterday being the Game 7 of Game 1s, that's a great way to put it. Is that you'll never get players to admit, because if you say it's a must win and you don't win it, the theory that, the mindset you're in is that now the series is over.
Right.
And Carolina wins Game 2, which they've got a lot of work and have a long way to go to get better, to be good enough to win Game 2, because Florida is going to play significantly better than they did last night. But if they win Game 2 and Carolina can get a split in Florida, now all of a sudden it's 3-game series and 2 of those games are on your ice. Not that Florida can't win here. They just proved it. But it is a long series, and you'll never get anybody within, no player, no coach will ever admit that Game 1 is we have to have it for any other reason than we really want it. So they're never going to put something final on a game like that, and they won't even do it tomorrow, even though I think reality tells us that it's an indication that it ain't going to happen if you don't win the game.
Right, and Florida has not been as good at home as they've been on the road in this playoffs. Bob has not been as good at home as he was on the road, but none of those. You're talking about hazy daydreams of the first week of June. None of the hazy daydreams of making it to next week even exist if you don't go out there and win on Thursday night.
I mean, if you want a game on Wednesday in Raleigh,
right?
I mean, tomorrow might be a must if you want a game on Wednesday in Raleigh. All right, let me get to a couple of other things with Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast. The ACC announced today. I know I was reading the column that they distributed $45 million in shared revenue to all of the full-time members in 23-24 for the 23-24 academic year. I don't have the SEC's numbers here or the Big Ten's numbers or the Big 12's numbers. My guess is it's probably $25 million shy of where the SEC and the Big Ten are, maybe a little bit more. And probably a little bit ahead of where the Big 12's numbers ultimately are. $45 million is certainly good. When you saw that story, what your reaction was?
Yeah, I saw the whole totals for all of the power conferences, which now that we're up to 18 in the Big 10, 16 in the SEC, 17 full members in the ACC, and 16 in the Big 12, they are somewhat comparable. It's not as drastic as when you had 10
Right.
in terms of the overall conference membership. The ACC was third to your thought, your projection, your inkling. It was leading the Big 12, if I remember correctly, by maybe about 75 to 125, 150 million. Like you're dealing with a noticeable step down by the time you get to the Big 12, but then also a noticeable gap before when you look up at the Super 2. The thing that is the most interesting to project moving forward is, number one, when these success initiatives go into place, when the revenue distribution that includes the television aspect of this goes into place, are we going to see the difference with the programs that really want to be a part of it? Are they going to be able to cash in on those opportunities? And then the other piece of this is what schools are going to end up getting less than the 45 million.
Right.
That's where we say, okay, how long will these university presidents, will these athletic directors, really feel comfortable, and what are they going to do, if anything, to try to counteract, what is going to be continuing rising costs of doing business while having a little bit less money coming in from the media rights deal.
Chip Patterson is joining us here in the Adam Gold Show. I do want to get into the when the distribution becomes uneven, and maybe what some schools can do in a second. How big a gap really was it, though? And now you're talking about it in terms of total. I think the ACC had like $711 million. Right. What was the number from? Was the Big Ten second, the SEC first, or was it flip Big Ten 1, SEC 2?
In the 23-24 fiscal year, Big Ten was at $928 million. That's 63.2 per school for the longest standing members, not the new additions from the Pac-12. SEC at $840 million. ACC, you just mentioned. And then, let's see, the Big 12 was less than that. Yeah.
Less than that. That's all we need to know. Less than that. Yeah. And the SEC is at 16 members. The Big 10 is at 18. The Big 12 is at, I have no idea, 14?
16.
16. 16, and the ACC is at 411. So everybody's going to get about $1.5 million. Now, to the schools that are operating at the bottom versus a Florida State or a Clemson or I guess a North Carolina or a Miami, right, on that on the higher end of the spectrum. If you're, I don't know who's going to be get hit the hardest here. Let's just use BC. They're the favorite part of of these examples. If you're BC and your number drops from 45 to 37, I'm throwing a number out there. What are your alternatives before we get into ideas that would maybe help make that difference back up? What are your alternatives? I mean, isn't this the ultimate? Where are you going to go? Nobody wants nobody in the power leagues want you. You could go to
no. Look, I tell you where my mind goes is to Kevin Willard. To Kevin Willard complaining about how the University of Maryland wouldn't let him stay an extra night in New York City when he wanted to have some team bonding around the holidays in New York City because they said you can't do that. I mean, I'm sorry, but congratulations, Boston College. You learn to speak Greyhound, buddy. You want to talk about where $8 million goes and how you end up making that up. You don't run to another conference. You don't what happens is that on very, very small levels, the financial department of these, the financial office of these athletic departments is going to start cutting costs. And that's going to lead to more layovers in LaGuardia. Sure. That's going to lead to, a little bit, maybe not as nice hotels when you are going on the road because the travel costs, that's the easiest place to do it. And so it's that something might not get fixed in the locker room. We might be waiting on maintenance to go take care of that water fountain. And that's the thing that's going to be, it's going to change a lot of things for these athletic departments. Again, those athletic directors, those university presidents, you're going to start to address the issues by cutting costs. Yeah. Then when the athlete experience is lessened because you are cutting costs, does that hurt your recruiting? And does that hurt your overall athlete well-being? How long are you willing to live with that? What are going to be the effects of that? We won't know that here in this 2025 or 2026 fiscal year. But when I think about the impacts of a school, again, apologies to Boston College, but you're just really easy for us to beat up on because you're way up there.
I mean, I could have used Pitt or Syracuse in the same way. I mean, it's
well, I mean, Boston, small, smaller school too. So I think that's what it will be. It will be the cost cutting that comes across the board for all the sports, where the experience for the athletes is lessened, and they might claim revenue sharing, they might claim the payouts, but it's just the way that $8 million in your example ends up being made up for.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's ways they can mitigate it, but, obviously I think you're right. And I'm sure at some point we'll go, man, we had sloppy joes for 2 straight weeks on training table, right? the sirloin, somehow the sirloin and the salmon disappeared. And all of a sudden it was sloppy joe night again? I thought this was yesterday.
We all of a sudden we don't have a up-to-date XOS system and a video scouting department. It's just Bill O'Brien actually cutting clips of film and taping them together and getting the projector out to be able to show them.
Bay. That's fantastic.
This is how we're going to end up defending the RPO next week, boys. Hold on.
Oh, that's awesome. Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast. I think, did you guys have done quarterbacks around the country, right?
Yeah, we had a robust discussion on today's show. A lot of conversation about the group of Big 12 quarterbacks going into the season. And then we were comparing it to the SEC quarterbacks, the Big 10 quarterbacks, and the ACC quarterbacks. And so, we have been sort of looking at, who's got there's a conference that's got the quarterbacks with the most, proven guys that are back, where even the transfers are guys with previous starting experience. You've got a conference where you've got higher rated players, that are projected to be really good, but still have yet to prove it. Obviously new starters at a lot of different positions, new transfers at a lot of different places as well. But we have been comparing the different conference quarterback outlooks.
If we ranked ACC quarterbacks, Cade Klubnik would be 1 for you, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Is number 2 Carson Beck, even though we really don't know what he's going to look like?
I will not put Carson Beck in a top 5.
Ooh, that's either good or bad. I don't know if that's good or bad yet, because there's a scenario where that's really bad because he's no good based on maybe injury or whatever.
I just think he needs his own category.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about a quarterback whose throwing arm and the elbow UCL surgery. I mean, we need to see it. And I will throw in that when Georgia started getting some injuries along the offensive line last year, Tate Ratledge, who recently got his name called in the NFL draft, that was the player when he went out, a great interior offensive lineman. More teams are getting pressure on Beck, and Beck under pressure was straight up not good.
Right.
And thankfully, he's at Miami, where the offensive line is good, and he's playing ACC defenses, which are not SEC defenses in terms of the number of future NFL players out there. So he will be set up to be able to have success if he's fully healthy. I don't have Carson Beck in my top 5, but I could easily move him into the number 2 or number 3 position. I'm just going to wait until I see it.
Who is number 2 then?
I've got Kevin Jennings from SMU.
I
think that how poorly he played against Penn State, which by the way was nothing like what he was for all year. That was his brain broke. I mean, I don't want to speak ill of him.
I thought his brain broke against Clemson too. Early in that game against Clemson, he was
early.
Awful.
True, but he led them back.
He did.
I mean, he did a great job.
He made a bunch of mistakes though in that game that would have gotten him destroyed elsewhere.
But I think that Kevin Jennings is my 2. I think Haynes King at Georgia Tech is my 3. Then we get, and that's where I feel the most confident. Then we get into a tier of 4 quarterbacks, and again, I'm putting Carson Beck to the side.
Sure.
Where I think that my number 4 is CJ Bailey at NC State. I think, but that's because I also think that Miller Moss, the former USC quarterback who transferred to Louisville, I think that Miller Moss has been good. And we have seen Jeff Brom took old noodle arm Jack Plummer and led them all the way to the ACC championship game. He has a quarterback friendly offense. He does a good job of setting them up. Jack Plummer and Tyler Shuck got to the league. They both owe a nice little Christmas gift, not just a card, for Jeff Brom. Kyron Drones, like a Miller Moss, has shown flashes throughout his
Virginia
career.
Tech, yeah.
But man, there's some not great stuff in there as well. And then the other one who I think is in this category, again, it would be, if I had to throw them in there, they would all be tied for 6th, but they are competing for spots number 4 and 5 on my power rankings. That would be Darian Mensah at Duke, who is very good at Tulane, but is getting a big step up in competition as he moves to the ACC.
What do you think of Gio Lopez at UNC?
I would put him ahead of Chandler Morris at UVA. I would put him ahead of Robbie Ashford or Deshaun Purdy at Wake Forest. I would put him ahead of Cal's quarterback situation, which still needs to get sorted out. I would put him ahead of Stanford's quarterback situation. But, I mean, I just mentioned UVA, Wake, Cal, and Stanford, the seemingly sort of bottom little chunk of the conference right there. Gio Lopez, very athletically gifted, and he and Fluff Bothwell, not in addition to being like an amazing name, he was a really good running back. That South Alabama ground game with mobile quarterback, good running back, Gio Lopez was very effective. I think that his addition to North Carolina maybe brought more clarity into what North Carolina's offense can be at its best, but I'm not ready to slot him ahead of Miller Moss, CJ Bailey, Darian Mensah, Kyron Drones.
Are there any incoming freshmen that excite you at all for the ACC in terms of the quarterbacks?
No. Yeah.
That's a problem. You should probably have some of those every year. In a conference with 72 teams, you should probably have some good incoming freshmen.
Florida State is in a position where
by the way, no Florida State quarterback makes the. We haven't talked about a Florida State quarterback yet, have we?
Thomas Castellanos. I didn't mention
from Boston College.
I didn't mention Grayson James, who took his job at Boston College. Remember, Castellanos was benched after 9 games, left the team before the end of the season. Don't love that. His skill set and new offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn. Yes, remember Gus Malzahn is now the OC at Florida State. That seems to be a good scheme fit. When you think about all the mobile quarterbacks and Thomas Castellanos' playmaking ability. But Florida State is a good example because Mike Norvell's under so much pressure to win right now that he probably hurt his quarterback recruiting with hiring Malzahn and bringing in Castellanos. That is such a quick fix to your offense. That is not developing, big time players for the future. Florida State has not had a big time quarterback recruit come into the program, develop in the program, and be really good since Jameis. And so that's a that's a
long time ago.
That's Chip. A decade. Yeah.
That is a long time. This reminds me of really what ultimately doomed the Bobby Bowden era, right? They went, and it wasn't like they had great quarterbacks. It wasn't like they were cranking out first round draft picks because they really never had them. But they always had good quarterbacks. I mean, Danny Cannell,
ACC Player of the Year.
Do you know Danny Cannell well, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Part of the Cover 3 podcast, Super Friends. But Cannell was one of the best Florida State quarterbacks of the last quarter century. But it's when they went to, try to remember his name, who started for all 4 years and was never any good. Even Drew Weatherford was part of that run of quarterbacks that just couldn't quite get it done. But they were better with the Peter Tom Willises of the world and those guys who played just 1 or 2 years. But they just kind of stayed and developed. You just don't see that anymore. It'd be good if Florida State or any of these schools would be bringing in quarterbacks to develop, like what Texas did. Arch Manning kind of hung around for a year. He played some.
This will be Arch's 3rd year of college football.
That doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah, first year as a starter.
That's incredible to me.
I know. I mean, and that's the thing is like when we were talking, because the conversation on the podcast was that the Big 12 brings back, Sam Levitt at Arizona State, Rocco Becht at Iowa State, Jake Retzlaff at BYU, Sawyer Robertson at Baylor, Josh Hoover at TCU, Baron Morton at Texas Tech, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, Jalen Daniels at Kansas. I mean, it's just like guys who have started whole years and been pretty good, and it's that whole combination. But we said the SEC has a different level that it can hit if Arch Manning, the weight pays off and he ends up coming out and just balling out. If, at Alabama, Ty Simpson ends up taking a step forward now that Kalen DeBoer's had another year there. You got guys like DJ Lagway at Florida, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. I mean, these are quarterbacks mentioned on the 2026 NFL draft picture. Mm-hmm. And so the SEC could jump ahead and claim supremacy there, but it's just a lot of unknown entities where I said Big 12 starts on the pole position. SEC might have the bigger engine if they can drive it well.
All right, real quick before we let you go, have you thought about potentially an engagement gift for Mr. and Mrs. Belichick?
I was just thinking about that projector we were talking about.
You were ready for that. You were ready for that question. That's fantastic.
I was thinking that it would be, again, if I am to speak to the North Carolina football fan who's just like, oh my gosh, like I cannot take like all these headlines.
I don't think any of this matters at all. I really don't.
I would just say that he is still a huge football nerd who loves this stuff. Anything he says or anything we hear or anything that indicates that he's just like grinding on how to, figure out ways to put this into place, teaching it to college kids or young men as opposed to pros is a very much to be determined.
Yeah.
Especially with a roster that just took in another huge crop of players in the spring portal window, with a roster that you got 70 players out of the portal. Wait, hold on. 40 players out of the portal, 30 true freshmen coming in. Like, they are going to show up to fall camp on day 0. And that's going to be a remarkable challenge of teaching the game of football and getting everybody on the same page between the beginning of fall camp to the season opener on Labor Day against TCU. If he does it, well, then that's why you spent all that money to bring in the 6-time Super Bowl winning head coach. But I think that he's I'd get him a projector. I'd get him some film stuff. All the football nerd stuff that he'd like.
You know what all the young people are in? They're into hiking these days. I would just get him a big gift certificate to REI.
Does it? I mean,
get him a Camelback.
Vineyard Vines is not his style, but I was thinking more of the Nantucket the Nantucket summer pullover type look.
Yeah, get him a basket, front basket for his bike.
Yeah,
when he's riding at at Martha's Vineyard or wherever they hang out.
Yeah,
there you go. You're the best, Chip. I appreciate your time, Chip Patterson at Chip_Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast. Talk to you next week.
Let's go, Canes! Sounds
very
good.
Nice. That's very good. Oh, we had a flourish today.